صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا ابن رسول الله يا مظلوم يا وحيد بكربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم واكرمنا بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا ابواب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've been discussing the journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it is incumbent upon us to cleanse before we add on. And so we must go through the greater war, the greater jihad, Jihadul Akbar, where constantly we are in between two sides and two camps, Janud al-Shaytan and Janud al-Rahman, the soldiers of Satan and the soldiers of the Merciful One. And this battle continues until the moment we die. That final moment really tells the story of who we were. So our whole lives, we're preparing for that moment, the moment of truth. And there is no moment that could be called the moment of truth as much as that moment. So let's prepare for that moment. In order to prepare, we have to now introspect, reflect over the possibility that we might have some diseases in our hearts, so that we can remove them. That a tear for Abu Abdullah alayhi salam on these nights can remove those diseases, if done sincerely. To reflect over what it is that is still keeping me away from God. A lot of the time when we set goals on what we want to do, whether it's in religion or anything else in dunya, we set goals and then we set we set goals and we set the ways in which we want to attain that goal or those goals. But we rarely look to what it is that's keeping me away from that goal. The barrier that's keeping me away from the goal, sometimes if you remove it, you'll arrive at the goal without doing anything extra. If you remove that barrier, they call it a mani'. Wood can be lit on fire, but not if it's wet. As soon as you remove the wetness, you dry the wood, it can burn, but it can't be burned when it's wet. So you have to look towards the mani' that's keeping you away. Those are those diseases in our hearts, so that we can't talk to the heart, and we can't allow the heart to begin to speak. The heart, we often point towards the physical heart, but when we're saying heart, we don't mean this heart. Okay, this is your physical heart, the organ. It's a physical representation of the heart that we're talking about. When I say heart, when we say qalb, we're talking about that core of the human being. Okay, the core, your spiritual heart. It's basically identifies who you really are, that qalb. Do you know why it's called qalb? Because al-qalb yanqalib. Yanqalib means it keeps turning, it keeps changing. So qalb, because it's always changing. And you want your qalb, your heart, to be firm. So that's why the Ahlul Bayt recommend us the famous dua. Imam al-Sadiq recommends this dua, and Shaykh Bahjat always says to recite this dua in the qunut. He always used to recite it in qunut. It's famous. It became famous after he would constantly recite it in qunut. It's from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, in your qunut, say, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Muqallib al-Qulub, because the hearts change, the changer of hearts. Thabbit qalbi, make my heart firm on your path. Don't allow it to keep changing. Khalas, let it be on the right path and stay on that path. Because it can be taken any which way if it isn't taken care of. So we want to develop a program, because we want to be very practical now. We want to develop a program in order to discipline that heart. That's what the science of the wayfarers actually is. Okay? So we have, for example, the science of fiqh, which most of us know about. Constantly, especially when I come to the Khoja communities, mashallah, the fiqh is amazing. I never have to explain anything about musafir, about if you have to come into jama'ah afterwards, to wait a little bit before the imam gets up. All those things, I get surprised because usually in the Arab communities, I have to explain all these things. But something that I find lacking a lot in this community is these ideas of sayr wa suluk. Okay, which you find more in Iranian communities, if anything. Sayr wa suluk is the science of wayfaring. What happened was, these ulama over the last few centuries decided to bring together a program of what we call tazkiyat al-nafs. Okay, the tazkiyatun nafs, the purification of the nafs, of the self. That there's a science to this. What do you mean science? Well, the same way in fiqh, you do 1, 2, 3, you know, you can't have a hajib when you do wudu. We know the rules. There are also rules to your spiritual progress. We don't know too much about it. And that's not really the fault of the community. It's because a lot of the time in the hawzat, actually, the focus was always fiqh and usul. So much. In fact, and subhanAllah, we're lucky that we have ulama that look towards what we need and not towards their names. Allama Tabatabai, may Allah have mercy on his soul, was a great practitioner of the science of Sayyid wa Suluk. He was known of the people of, I'm going to say the word now, Irfan, that people get so scared of, that almost as if it's a swear word, right? There's nothing wrong with Irfan, and I'm going to explain what Irfan is. He was a practitioner of Irfan, and although that made people shun him away, he was also of the highest levels of fiqh and usul, right? So he could have been a marja very easily. He was a mujtahid of the highest level, and he could have been a marja and had muqallidin. But he saw that there was a need elsewhere in tafsir al-Quran. So he decided, although I could be a marja, this is where I'm needed. So he wrote Tafsir al-Mizan, which took 20 years to write. Someone of that level took him 20 years, and it's a masterpiece right now. One of the best tafsirs that we have, written last century, recently. Because a man who was a genius saw that we needed this more than his own name. But you know, in the Tafsir al-Quran, in the Hawza, is looked upon as an easy subject. They say, why was he going to Tafsir al-Quran? That's not scholarly. Scholarly is fiqh and usul. But he saw that, no, actually, this takes deep scholarship. And so he brought us this masterpiece. Likewise, he was of the practitioners. From his teacher, Sayyid Ali al-Qadi, if you've heard of him, Sayyid Ali al-Qadi al-Tabatabai. Of his students was Allama Tabatabai. Another student of his was Shaykh Bahjat. So usually Sayyid Ali al-Qadi is the one that the Urafat, they salute to, okay? Now these people, what they did was, they were of the last generation, but before them, they had a science of Sayr al-Suluk, a way to do this. So what we want to try to do right now, over the next few nights, is to understand this science. To understand, okay, now what do I do? Right? How do I begin to cleanse that heart? So first of all, let's define this heart. Let's talk about this heart. Interestingly enough, I said what it means in Arabic, qalb, but you can look at all the other languages. Every language has a way in which it describes the heart. As if the heart was a living being, where they say, brave heart, dead heart, cold heart, you're stone-hearted, cold-hearted, all these different ways in which you describe a heart. He wears his heart on his sleeve, right? All these different metaphors that we say. Usually, this heart is understood in every culture, even outside of religion, to be that core of the human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when He describes the heart and what it means to us, He describes it whilst juxtaposing the final day. He says, يَوْمَ, on that day. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. He says that on that day, money will not benefit you, wealth won't benefit you, and children won't benefit you. You know what will benefit you? إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except the one who comes towards Allah with a qalb, a heart that is sound and pure. Qalb salim. That's what we need to attain. Qalb salim means no disease, no spiritual disease, no blemishes. No blemishes on that heart. It's qalb salim. We wish to attain al-qalb as-salim. Yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is plainly telling us, it's not money, it's not wealth, and it's not children. And we spend most of our day, let's say if we're spending 8 hours sleeping, if that, 7 hours sleeping, let's say, and we spend 8 hours at work, 9 hours at work, then an hour to work and an hour back. So it's been, let's say, 10, 11 hours for my wealth, right? And 8 hours or 7 hours resting, 17 hours gone. Then there's bathroom time, especially if you have waswasa. That's hopefully not too much, right? Bathroom time. And you have food time. Let's say 19, 20 hours almost. You've got 4 hours left. What do you do in that 4 hours? Maybe spend time with your babies. Or you want to start a family. Or, there's not a lot of time left to stand between your Lord and start to introspect and reflect and wonder about, do I have a clean heart? And am I right now upon a qalb salim or not? So we're spending our lives with malu banun. And He said, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. I'm not saying now everyone retire and stay home and start to pray. I'm saying we can still do that with a pure intention. It becomes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So of course it's okay, that can be for Allah. What we're saying ultimately is that when people forget that it's for Allah, and unfortunately that's the case, we say that my intention's for Allah, but someone's not really actively feeling that way. They're legitly just saving up money, paying their bill, going home, eating. So they kind of forget. That's why it's called ghafla. That's why you go to sleep. You kind of forget. You started out with a good intention, but you forgot on the way. So it's really tough to go back into yaqdha, to wake up again. And when you wake up, sometimes you think you're awake. And then you realize at a moment, something wakes you up and you go, whoa, wait a minute, I was asleep the whole time? I thought I was awake the whole time. I was actually asleep. So, as we said yesterday, you don't know that you don't know. So, we want to be upon that qalb salim. How do I begin to attain a qalb salim? Well, in the very beginning, we spoke about the diseases, and introspection is super important. I just want to highlight it one more time, because just like the physical heart, which is a reflection of the spiritual heart, sometimes there might be a disease in the physical heart that we don't know about. Sometimes we know a brother or a sister that seem perfectly healthy, that play sports on the weekend, and they seem fine. And suddenly, Allah takes His amana. And we're shocked. What happened? How did they die? They were fine. We just played tennis last week. They were fine. How come this person died now? They didn't seem sick, right? The spiritual heart is the same way. It might not seem sick. That's why you have to introspect really deeply. You have to ask really deep questions to yourself. You have to really consider why you act the way you act and how you're living right now, and if it's the right thing, and if you're ready to die upon what you're on right now. So it takes deep introspection, because you don't know if it's sick. That's why we're recommended to have a partner on this path. When you're trying to cleanse yourself, it's important to try to find a partner. That partner might be your wife or husband, but it might also be your mother or father. It might also be a friend. It might be a son or daughter. Someone that understands you on that level and is trying to work on themselves as well. Because that person can see what you can't see. If you trust them, it's the same way, Shakespeare in Macbeth, he says, God has made it such that we can't see our own faces. Right? Sometimes you're eating and you get something in your beard and you don't know it's there, and someone says, take it off, right? Okay, thank you. So I take it off. Because the person saw from the outside, from their point of view. I can't always see it from my point of view. So it's good to have a partner, because al-mu'min mir'at akhihi al-mu'min. The believer is the mirror of his believing brother. That's what that hadith means. That I'm supposed to have a brother or a sister with me on the path, because doing it alone, it's not a path that you travel alone. You're supposed to have a partner, a teacher. Okay? It's a very difficult path to go on alone. It's not a lonely path. You're not supposed to do that. So try to find a partner to help you. Someone that you can trust, that can identify issues that you can work on, and you can identify issues they can work on. You have a trust between each other. Not criticizing each other, not destroying each other, helping each other. Because very slowly, small actions that we don't notice form a black dot on the heart. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, every time you sin, a small black dot appears on the heart. And as those sins accumulate, those black dots begin to accumulate until one day, God forbid, the whole heart is overwhelmed and encompassed with darkness. Once that heart becomes dark, it no longer understands. So it cannot take heed anymore. It becomes almost too late. Very, very difficult for this heart to understand. In the Quran, Allah says about these hearts, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ marad. They have sicknesses in their hearts. He also says, and this part really shows you how a heart, we think that it's just the brain or the mind that understands, but the heart also is a heart of understanding. Is لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. Those people, he says, they have hearts they don't understand with. لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They can't understand with the hearts that they have. That means there are hearts يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. So there are hearts that can understand. Hearts that can understand. So if the heart is something of understanding, and I start to accumulate those dots of darkness on my heart, I'm going to stop understanding this relationship between me and Allah. That's why that hadith of Imam Sadiq, when he says, Al-ilm nur min Allah, yaqdhifu fi qalb man yasha. He says, reading and studying is not the actual true way to knowledge. That's very important. It has its place. But the true way is that ilm is nur, knowledge is light sent into the heart of whom Allah wills. You think Allah's going to send nur into a dark heart? It's not fertile. It's not fertile soil to send nur into. Nur must be sent into a heart that's ready, a heart that's cleansed. When the nur goes in there, then it begins to manifest true tajalli. So, we have a partner. We have to take care of that darkness in my heart if it comes. Otherwise, the dark heart becomes like who? Shimr. Shimr on the day of Ashura is standing right there. And these hadiths really, if you deep them, they blow your mind. Because if you put yourself in that situation and you imagine that Imam al-Mahdi, if you imagine that the Imam was standing right in front of you and he gave you a lecture. Imagine he was the one sitting on the minbar giving us the lecture. Or what if he gave you a lecture on your own? Imam al-Ma'soom, the chosen one of Allah, gave you. So this has got to change you. Imagine you didn't listen to anything he had to say. It seems to you right now unfathomable. How could I not listen? Shimr stands right in front of the Imam of his time, the chosen one of his time, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. And Abu Abdullah kept telling him, don't do this. Don't you know who I am? Don't do this. There is no one else on earth that's a son of a prophet. Don't do this. And Shimr would say, I don't understand what you're saying. He didn't understand. So Habib ibn Mudahir says to him, you're not lying. You're right. You don't understand. Because Allah put a lock on your heart. He can't understand anymore. The heart became so dark, so encompassed with sin. He no longer understood. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. So one has to really take care, because if you look at all the disasters that occur in the world, all evils, right? I'm not talking about earthquakes. Those things are not actually evil. We can talk about that another time. But evils, evil intentions, things that happen to other people through willpower, everything bad that we're suffering from right now has come from another human heart. Everything. From the atmosphere, to the environment, to wars, to even personal issues, it's all come from a human heart. If you want to change the world, if you want to help the people of the world, begin to change your heart. If you really want to be revolutionary, you must go through a discipline of the self. That's the most revolutionary thing you can do. To start to change yourself from within. Small decisions that you make on this path can drastically affect fates and destinies. Drastically. Small decisions. Small decisions between your sins. You don't know where that sin's going to lead. It might lead to a dead heart. One more sin too many might lead to a dead heart that does not accept light. One sin too many. You pushed over the threshold. Small decisions. When Muslim ibn Aqil came to Kufa and he was with Hani ibn Urwa, he was with the Shia and they were hiding him. Because Ibn Marjana was looking around for Muslim. They were trying to find Muslim. When they took Hani, because Hani went to the palace, they called him, and he was someone that had a huge tribe behind him. When they spoke to Hani, they took him into the dungeon and began to torture him. The tribe of Hani, except this, Muslim was still in Hani's house, safe. Hani was now in the dungeon being tortured. The tribe didn't accept for Hani to be missing. They didn't know that he was being tortured. They didn't know. So they went towards the palace. Hundreds of people from his tribe protesting outside the palace. Ubaidullah comes out and sees everyone protesting and thinks, okay, they're a very powerful tribe and they want Hani. They said, we demand you bring Hani to us now. So Ubaidullah goes and calls a man by the name of Shuraih. Shuraih al-Qadi. Shuraih al-Qadi was the judge of Kufa. So, as the judge of the community, he was someone who was respected and trusted. He's the judge. He tells Shuraih, go outside and tell the people, Hani bi khair, that Hani is safe. And if you don't, I'm going to terrorize your life. So now Shuraih was in between two minds. People trusted Shuraih. He was so trustworthy amongst the people. If he goes outside and tells them Hani is being tortured, then it's going to be a big battle. If he tells them Hani bi khair, Hani is good, Hani is safe, the people will trust him. Shuraih goes outside and tells the crowd, "O people, Hani bi khair." At that moment, the tribe of Hani, they said, Shuraih said Hani bi khair, that means Hani bi khair. They went home. Do you know what would have happened if Shuraih made the right decision? The tribe would have fought Ubaidullah, freed Hani, been with Muslim. Karbala wouldn't have happened. One small decision of one man. He didn't know where that was going to lead, but he knew it was wrong. He thought, you know what, maybe just a white lie. I mean, they won't kill Hani. Won't hurt him too much. Whatever he had to say to himself to justify his action. Right? He didn't know it was going to lead to the greatest massacre and sacrifice. You don't know where your sin's going to lead. You don't know where the next lie is going to lead. You don't know where that next bit of conceit or treachery is going to lead. But it's going to form a black dot on your heart, and it might be one dot too many. A man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said to him, Ya Rasulullah, ma huwa al-bir? What is righteousness? And it's reported that the Prophet replied, In aratta al-bir, if you want to know what righteousness is, what's correct, the right way, he said, Stafti qalbak. Ask your heart. Because you know, a healthy heart knows. There can be an unhealthy heart. Stafti qalbak walau aftaka an-nas. Even if everyone else is saying this is the right thing, and you know it's the wrong thing, ask your heart and your heart will know. You know when you just know that this thing is not correct. Even if it's not haram, you know it's not correct to do this thing. Your heart knows that. If your heart is still healthy and you have a bit of guilt, that's a good thing. Your heart knows, so you stay away from that. But the hadith also shows us that the heart again understands. So if you keep your heart healthy, it can be a compass for you. Now, on this path, we want to begin with step 1. It's only that when we begin with these steps, sometimes we don't fully appreciate the keys that the Ahlul Bayt are giving us. So we say we want this. Right now you guys are saying we want this. I'm saying I want this. We're all saying, okay, we want to purify that heart. How do I begin? But before we begin, we really have to appreciate the keys that the Ahlul Bayt are going to give us. Because a lot of the time, we act like the angels where we don't really know what's going on and we keep questioning, but we don't know. So when they kept complaining, well, they weren't actually complaining or questioning. They were actually intrigued because they couldn't believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was creating a human being that could disobey Him. Because He had created other creatures before, not exactly like us, that disobeyed, the Nasnas. And they said, will you create a creature that will shed blood on the earth? And He said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know what you don't know. I know something else about this creature. And then He brought Adam. And He taught Adam the names. And then He told Adam, speak to them. Tell them the names. Anbi'hum bi asma'ihim. And Adam began to recite the name. Now in tafsirs, the names mean different things. But he began to recite the names. The angels watched. They said, okay. Then they said, La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We don't know except what you taught us. So they didn't actually understand the name. They just stopped and they said, okay, khalas, like you say so. And Adam's saying the names. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. So, La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We have no knowledge except that which you've given us. But they don't really know what's going on. A lot of the time, that's how we act. Okay? We say we want the secrets. Kumail and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Reciting the secrets. What did they speak about? I want to know what they spoke about. I want to know. What did they discuss on those nights? I wish I could know. Well, the hadiths are there. And then we know. And then we say, okay, cool. La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. It doesn't change us. But those key teachings changed Kumail. So when we're reading them, why aren't they changing us? We're not giving it enough thought. We say hadiths on the minbar and we just pass by them as if they were just a quote from George Washington or something like that. These are the sayings of the Ahlul Bayt. These are the keys to existence and the treasures of knowledge. Small hadiths that you might take for granted if you contemplate it for years and years. And subhanAllah, the hadith I'm about to say right now, just today, as I prepared this lecture, I've recited this hadith since 2017. That's when I first came across this hadith. And I've been reciting it since then, wherever I go. And today, as I prepared this lecture, I found a new perspective for it. Just, you keep it with you. You keep the hadith with you for a long time. Because in 2 years, it's going to mean something very different to what it means to you now. It's going to grow with you. You're going to realize new dimensions to the hadith. There's going to be bawatin, layers. In this hadith, Imam Ali says to Kumail, Ya Kumail. This is the beginning of our journey now, guys. We're going to begin the journey. This is the first step. Ya Ali, what's the first step? He says, Ya Kumail, ma min harakatin illa wa anta muhtajun fiha ila al-ma'rifah. He says, Oh Kumail, there is no movement that you can make. Ma min haraka. There is nothing that you can do, no action. You cannot do anything. Illa wa anta muhtaj, except that you are needy ila al-ma'rifah, to knowledge. Ma'rifah, true knowledge. You cannot act and you cannot move except that you are in need of knowledge. It's the first thing. If there was a lion behind me right now and I didn't know about it, I wouldn't run. I would only run once I know he's there. You can't move until you know. Knowledge is the absolute first step. Now, I said the hadith, and many of us may have thought, is that it? Was that it? That whole build-up for that hadith? What's so special about that hadith? You must reflect over that hadith. That hadith is a very special hadith. And that's why, upon this journey, we can't be spoon-fed. Introspection and contemplation, better than 70 years of worship, is because it's hard. It's not easy to reflect and contemplate. You have to go home and you have to twist that hadith up and down and discuss it with your family and see what could the Imam mean when he says to Kumail, Ma min harakatin illa wa anta muhtajun fiha ila al-ma'rifah. And how do I apply that? Well, that means I am in absolute need of knowledge. I'm in absolute need of that. Each and every single one of us, big and small, woman, man, whatever it is that you do, whether you're a banker or a CEO or a stay-at-home mom or dad, you need knowledge because you can't move without it. And if you stop seeking knowledge, you stop moving. And whatever doesn't move is dead. So you died. You still look like you're alive, but you're not moving anymore. For you to move means that you're going from place A to place B. It means you're going from potential to actuality. So you're actualizing something. If you are not moving, you're not actualizing anything. That means you've settled for what you are right now. No more movement. That's you now. Khalas. If you want to move, you need knowledge. So each and every single one of us, hawza, no hawza, uni, no uni, 60 years old, 20 years old, 10 years old. You need to begin a journey of knowledge, a serious journey of knowledge, a serious one, where you actually read books. And there's a lot right now that's translated for us to begin reading in English. And we have to start. Let alone our contemplations upon the du'as, Sahifa Sajadiyya, and Nahjul Balagha, and Du'a Kumail, these things that we can contemplate on. Maybe I hope we're reading them. But if we're not, we need to at least give time, dedicate time. If you want a proven way to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, proven through knowledge, a proven way, 100%, tried and tested, there's going to be some conditions I'm going to add on afterwards. Okay? But if you want the tried and tested, best, you want to get to Allah like a rocket, 3 hours a day. I know it seems like much. 3 hours a day of seeking knowledge. 3 hours of seeking knowledge includes reading, it includes contemplating, it includes listening to a lecture or a podcast, it includes discussion with someone upon a form of knowledge. Do you know why you were created? For knowledge. لِيَعْبُدُونَ أَيْ لِيَعْرِفُونَ. To know. To know. You're knowers. You're the only creature that gets to know things. Every other creature wants to be like you. Every other creature wants to become you. You know all those trees and stones outside? Even food and fruits. Every atom does tasbih of Allah's name. Everything wants to be close to Allah, but it doesn't have the opportunity to, but human beings do, so they want to be human beings. And guess what? they move towards that. They move towards becoming human beings. Because when that seed that wants to be a human being is planted in the soil and becomes a tree, and then it bears an apple, and you take that fruit and you eat it, that apple now became you. The apple that was a tree, that was a seed, went to Allah. That seed went to Allah. All these things are trying to be human so they can go to Allah. You're human. You're the one that gets to decide. You don't want to go to Allah? 3 hours. If you can't do 3 hours, okay, it might be a lot. I start high because I know no one's going to do 3 hours. 2 hours. You can't do 2 hours? 1 hour. A day. 1 hour a day, ya akhi. See, 1 hour doesn't seem so hard right now when I said 3, right? 1 hour a day of seeking knowledge. It's okay, Habibi, 1 hour of discussion, contemplation, listening. You have to move. 1 hour a day. Can't do an hour? Half an hour. But don't have zero. Don't have zero intellectual stimulation. If you want to go to Allah like a turtle, half an hour. At least you're still going. Okay, half an hour. When, in the early years of Hawza, my shaykh made me sign a contract. Me and all the other students. We all signed a contract. With who? With Imam al-Mahdi. He said, I might not be able to watch you all the time, but this is a contract between you and Imam Mahdi. You're living in his house now in the Hawza. You're eating from his food. This is from Baytul Imam, Baytul Mal. So, this is a promise between you and the Imam. What's the promise, Shaykh? What do you make me sign? I had to study 11 hours a day minimum. Between me and the Imam. He said, if you don't, that's between you and the Imam. You sign. Or don't come to Hawza. I signed it. On days that I reached 9 or 10 hours, I would stress. And I went to Shaykh, I only got 10 hours. 1 hour qada tomorrow. 12 hours tomorrow. Wallah, very stressful. But over time, wallah, I swear to God, it sounds crazy. Even when I remember it now, it's crazy because this was before I was married. When I didn't have anything. We would study 14, 15 hours a day sometimes. I swear to God. I swear to God. So when we say 3, I find 3 very minimal. Let alone 2, let alone 1. So I think that we can all give 1. We have to begin with that. To begin with that. So we begin on the path of knowledge. And we move towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that path. But knowledge has a weakness. This is the condition that I had to add on. You can't just seek knowledge and then think that it's automatic. There's a condition. Because knowledge has a weakness. Unfortunately, a professor can give you a whole lesson on the dangers of smoking, on what it does to your lungs. You know, my grandmother is about 80, she smokes, she swears to God it does nothing to her. But science says otherwise. Of what it does to your lungs. And then once there is a break, everyone leaves the classroom, he lights up a cigarette. But he knows that it's bad for you. He knows that this is going to harm his body. He still smokes anyway. There is no other creature like insan that does that. A deer does not run into fire. It sees fire, it runs away. Insan knows something is bad for him, it still does. This is why knowledge is very dangerous. So as I'm telling you seek knowledge, I must also tell you the following. For every hour of seeking knowledge, this is said by one of the scholars in the Hawza. I remember in my first year he told me this. For every hour, Ya Husain, that you seek knowledge, spend 2 hours disciplining yourself. Spend 2 hours purifying yourself. Because knowledge, as Imam Khomeini says, knowledge can be hijabul akbar between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a dangerous path that we're going to go down now. Because it can be the closest thing that takes us to Allah, and it can be the thing that takes us furthest away from Allah. Because the worst thing that you could ever be is someone who has knowledge that did not act upon it. We have hadith of the one who has knowledge that does not act upon that knowledge in the pits of hell has the stinkiest and stenchiest smell that even the treacherous people like Yazid run away from them. Because that's a person that had the knowledge and did not apply. So knowledge has a weakness. The weakness of knowledge is that you don't have to apply what you know. How many of us here know? Do we apply everything we know? It's very scary. That's why it's very scary to be someone who sits on this minbar, because you could take people to heaven and then you go to hell. Because you're telling people what to do and you're not doing it. And so if we're going to go down the path of knowledge, we have to make a decision from now that we're going to apply what we know. That's why the weakness of knowledge has to be substituted, has to be filled with the next step. And the next step is the step of Iman. Knowledge is not enough. So I need Iman with my knowledge. That's the second step of the journey. The first step is Ilm. I need to get to Iman. How do I get to Iman? So I can make up for this lack and weakness within knowledge. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll continue to discuss achieving Iman. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Salawat. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi wa ya Mawlai ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi wa ya مولاي يا ابن رسول الله يا مظلوم يا وحيد بكربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. Blessings be upon the parched lips of Husain. Blessings be upon the thirsty throat of Husain. Blessings be upon the chest that Fatima would kiss. Blessings be upon the chest that Rasulullah would embrace. Blessings upon the chest that Sakina would sleep on. Blessings upon the chest that the horses trampled upon. When Imam as-Sajjad looked towards the battlefield and he heard his father call out, Hal min nasirun yansuruna. Is there anyone out there to help the son of Rasulullah? There was no response. The tent of Abbas was empty. The tent of Akbar was empty. The tent of Habib was empty. Where are all of you? I call you, but there is no response. Imam as-Sajjad would think about those moments every day. Whenever he would drink water, he would remember his father. In his later years, as he walked through a town, he saw a butcher slaughtering his sheep. He watched as the knife was placed upon the neck of the sheep. He watched as the blood spilled from the neck of the sheep. He said, "Oh butcher, may I ask you a question?" "Yes, of course. What do you wish to ask?" He says, "Oh butcher, before you slaughtered that sheep, did you give it a cup of water to drink?" The butcher replied, "Why, of course. How could I be so cruel not to give the sheep a cup of water before I slaughtered it?" Imam as-Sajjad replies, "Oh butcher, قتل الحسين بكربلاء عطشانا." My father Husain was killed in Karbala, was thirsty without a drop of water to drink, and all that quenched his thirst was his own blood. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. ولعنة الله على الظالمين إلى يوم القيامة.